Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. This week, our guest is the 22nd director of the Voice of America and former dean of the Southern Cal Annenberg School of Communications, Geoffrey Cowan. Remember, we love taking your questions, so write into politicswarroom@gmail.com or send a tweet to @Politicon for next week's show. We'll get to as many as we can, but don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can also get text updates about what's next for Politicon and Politics War Room by signing up at politicon.com. Tell your friends about us and remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Now, please check out the links to our sponsors, Naked Wines, Fast Growing Trees, and Quince in the show notes. We thank you for supporting these sponsors. It helps make this podcast happen. James, let's cease all this talk about a looming or a potential constitutional crisis. It's here. The administration ignored a judge's order to halt a deportation absent due process, probably lied about it. The Homeland Security boss said he's not going to be bothered by judges. Trump called for impeaching judges that rule against him. Some idiotic freshman congressman from Texas introduced an impeachment measure against this particular judge. Trump went on Fox TV, where else, to say he'd never violate a court order, just like he had no idea what Project 2025 was about, or that he was going to release his tax returns whenever he could, or any other premeditated lies. It's good that Chief Justice John Roberts gave Trump a light tap on the wrist, but it was Roberts' decision last year giving Trump criminal immunity from almost anything he does, carte blanche while he's president, that has emboldened him to even more recklessly stiff the rule of law. He's trying to undo Biden's pardons of Liz Cheney and Mark Milley under the absurd pretense that they were signed by AutoPen. There's only one reason he's doing that. That's because he wants to go after them. He on the deportation, he said that these Venezuelans were gang members. There's a big question as to whether they really were. And he used for only the fourth time in history the Alien Enemies Act. Every other time it's been used in wartime. Maybe we are at war with Venezuela, but I didn't know about it. We really are in a constitutional crisis, and it's time for people to stand up to that.
Well, we are. It's undoubtedly. And there are two things that are going on. And there's a new book out, I'm told, by this guy, Alec Eisenstadt. I might be got his name wrong, who followed the whole Trump operation. And it's all about resentment and revenge. So that's what all of this is about. Mm-hmm. He wants to go after his enemies. He wants to do all this. And concurrently with this, you have the whole DOGE operation. So let's talk about DOGE for just a minute. Why would they be? Did you know that number of people that work in Social Security Administration was at an all-time low when Donald Trump took office? That federal employment has not grown over the last 50 years. But why are they going ramshackling through, willy-nilly, cutting everything, getting rid of agencies? What's the motivation? Why are they doing this? Normally, politics people try to not do unpopular things. But here, there's a lust for it. And the answer is simple. Because if you don't have, Colonel Mustard with the candlestick in the library when you were a kid, it's the Willie Sutton thing. That's where the money is. Mm-hmm. And what do they want with that money? They want to give it to people like Elon Musk and gazillionaires in the form of tax cuts. And they know that if they can't come up with the savings, that the markets are going to take not very kindly to this. And maybe there's somebody with enough courage, I don't know if the CBO does, to point all this out. But they're going after your Social Security so they can pay themselves off in the form of tax cuts. Don't kid yourself. They're going after your Medicare, your Medicaid for that. They're going after airline safety for that. They're going after food and drug safety for that. They're going after the national parks for that. It's all the Willie Sutton motive. They're going where the money is so they can get it for themselves. And Trump doesn't care. All he wants to do is, suck up to Putin and get all of his perceived enemies back. It's just where we are. It is not that complicated.
You're absolutely right. And on the international front, there really is a first cousin to this. On Ukraine, he's going to get rolled by Vladimir Putin because basically he's much more comfortable with a dictator like Putin than he is a struggling democracy. So therefore, he also wants to end the American role as the commander of NATO, begun under General Eisenhower in 1951, because he wants to do away basically with the prominent American role there. He caving into the Russians. It is time for every former military officer now, given what he's doing to NATO, given the people he's put in the Pentagon, starting at the top, given the fact that he plans to try to go after criminally Mark Milley, which is absurd. It's time for all those people. That's you, Jim Mattis, and others to speak out. What he's doing, he's putting at risk a valuable institution. And it's just not bad business as usual. It's unconstitutional and impairing business.
So what physicists look for is a unified theory to explain something, matter E = mc squared. I'm not a physicist, there's a formula. And so we're watching this stuff for Putin. We're watching us vote with North Korea, Belarus, and Russia. We're turning our backs on Ukraine. Putin leaves the American representative waiting, 8 hours in his outer office. He doesn't, and it's a chicken shit country. John McCain was right. It's a gas station masquerading as a country. Their military worth of shit. They don't even have an aircraft carrier. They got what is a rust bucket. Admiral Kuchinov or something. So there's got to be a unified theory that explains everything. It fits into one thing. And of course, we know what that theory is. There is a P-tape or an equivalent of a P-tape. I cannot tell you it's exactly a P-tape, but the fact that the Russian, that Putin specifically, has something on Trump, absolutely. And if you see that, then everything else is explained.
Yep.
It's the only reason. It's the only explanation that fits every action. There is a P-tape or the equivalent of a P-tape.
Yeah. James, I fear that you were right. Let me turn to the Democrats for a second. There is a huge furor going on with a number of Democrats demanding that Chuck Schumer be toppled as Senate Democratic leader, primaried in 2028. Let's just review quickly what happened. The Republicans on a virtual partisan party line vote passed a 6-month budget extension to keep the government in operation. It's a bad bill. It has some bad provisions in it. It's 6 months. It's not the big stuff yet, but it was a bad bill, and I think all the Democrats that voted against it in the House were right. It went over to the Senate. There were two choices. Number one, you filibuster it. You take responsibility for killing it, at which point there would be a government shutdown. Usually government shutdowns help Democrats. Democrats are seen as the party that wants government. Republicans do not. I fear it would have been different this time. Trump would have said, man, you know what? We got a great economy going, which we don't. There are all kinds of trouble spots, consumer confidence, the market. And he would have blamed all the problems on the Democrats, and he could have kept it going for a while. And moreover, his pal Elon Musk would just be you can't imagine how thrilled he would be that he wouldn't have to actually cashier people. He'd just say, never come back. He would have been even more emboldened. So the question was, if you did what Schumer did and you voted to keep the government going, which has got everybody such in arms, what were the options? What was the outcome? Where did it go? So I think I uncomfortably believe that Schumer ended up doing uncomfortably the right thing. Final point. Two final points. Number one, they say this was our moment of leverage. No. What's the leverage? You're a minority party. The moment of leverage will come when they try to cut Medicaid, Some point they're going to have to do that, maybe Social Security and other things. Then you have leverage and you ought to utilize it to the maximum extent. I am not one of those like Tom Suozzi and Mark Penn who say work with them when you can. You can't. But this was not the time. This was not the fight. Moreover, replace Chuck Schumer with who? I don't know what the answer to that is. I wish Chuck would stay off television and just stay inside and be the able legislator that he is. But I have to say, James, I think he's getting a bum rap on this one.
So, we're in this. This is a long fight. We got a whole process. And there are going to be plenty of hills to die on. The debt extension
right.
Clearly is going to be one. Reconciliation will be another. The tax cuts, trying to ram it through, will be another. So, if you ask me, did Senator Schumer, by the way, I heard personally from one senator who told me that this senator voted against it, but she's glad that Senator Schumer did what he did. And Senator Whitehouse said the same thing.
Yep.
And he was protecting his 2026 incumbents. All right, we're not going to let this do back. But I think this is to be determined. But potentially, this might be a very good strategic long-term play. Why do I say that? So let's say they don't have the votes on reconciliation. They got to go get Democratic votes. We're not going to give it to them. And inevitably, they're going to say, well, we're responsible for shutting the government down. But we have another arrow in our quiver during that debate. We said, look, we went out of our way. We had 10 United States senators at bitter heat, eviscerated in their own party that tried to work and keep this enterprise going. And you just turned your back on them. So I think down the road, this is going to give us some credibility. And I don't agree. There are going to be plenty of chances. Don't worry. There's plenty of times for us to fall on our sword. This probably wasn't the most opportune time. And this will I'm hoping, will probably make it easier down the line when, by necessity, we're going to have to do this. But I tell Democrats, don't worry, Armageddon is coming. That there's going to be a point where, to the extent that we have any power, it's going to be all in everybody. But when you don't have superior forces, you have no power, you have to plot and scheme as to the time and manner that you have some control of when you fight Armageddon. And that's why we are in one of the things that, is going to have an effect. I'm not going to tell you it's going to change everything around, but Wisconsin Supreme Court is going to have an effect. And then Virginia governor have an effect. We don't have a lot of tools at our disposal. We're pretty ragtag. We don't have any power. So we need to play for every little break we can get.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I don't think the choice was whether you take him on now or you basically, decide you're not going to fight. Of course you're going to fight. You ought to fight every chance you get. But when you're in the minority, and as you say, the opportunities are not plentiful right now, you pick your fights. This was not a smart one to pick. There will be smart ones to pick, including the elections you cited, including reconciliation, including the debt ceiling, maybe including the budget funding in September. And I suspect I talked to the same senator that you did or may have, who said that even though she voted the other way, that Schumer basically saved the Democrats from an embarrassment.
Right. I suspect that we did.
Yeah.
So, I want people to think about this, and I would be interested like Rick Atkinson or Ron Chernoff. But from my amateur reading of the founding of the country and Revolutionary War history, one of the most critical decisions was made by George Washington when he retreated from Long Island. The British came in, I don't know, had 80, 100 ships, and they came ashore at Long Island, went through, New York City. Where did he retreat to? A place called Valley Forge.
Heard of it.
And then what happened, right where you grew up, he camped there in the winter, and then, on Christmas Day, he crossed the Delaware. We won at Trenton. We won at Princeton. probably the most critical battles of the entire Revolutionary War. Had George Washington fought them on the beaches, in Long Island, we undoubtedly would have lost. So don't tell me that there is not a successful maneuver that has been tried in the past called the strategic retreat, because it is, and it's called for. It's a very, sometimes it's very effective maneuver, and that can be true in military history, it can be true in political history. You want to engage the battle under the terms and in conditions that are most favorable for you. The Union fell back on the first day of Gettysburg. But where did they fall back to? The high ground.
Right.
Okay? Always in these, we must fight now every day. When we get up in the morning, we have to fight. We have to spit nails all day. There's a time for that. Right. And it's coming quick. It's not, no one's saying you got to wait a year and a half. Okay? It's almost certainly coming. What's an official meteorological summer starts June the 22nd. Of course, down here it starts on May the 1st, but that's all right too. It's coming. Don't worry. The battle is going to be engaged, but just, maybe we fall back to the high ground, or maybe we end up at Valley Forge, which, of course, my other favorite thing about Valley Forge, it was first vaccine mandate ever. If you were George Washington's army, you had to have a smallpox vaccine. That you couldn't opt out. Bobby Kennedy would have told him to go fuck himself if he would have been with George Washington at Valley Forge. But that's the history of our country, and that's happened time and time again. And I'm all for aggression, but they fell back. I guess it was Reynolds, Hancock. They fall back the first day, but they'd fall back to the higher ground.
Well put. The choice is not between caving in and fighting every day. The choice is picking your spots, and you're absolutely right. And and the high ground is you can see it now. It's not that far away. And my guess is that Chuck Schumer, who I have criticized sometimes in the past, Chuck Schumer will be front and center in that fight.
Yeah, and again, the other thing I'll just come back to what we talked about earlier. Never talk about the cuts, never talk about DOGE, never talk about any of this without talking about motive. Because motive explains everything.
Yeah.
And, some people think, well, they just gratuitous line to hurt people. They don't care if they hurt people. I don't think that's incidental to their thinking. They just want the money.
Yeah.
And that's where the big money is.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
Find the perfect wine for any moment with Naked Wines. It's really good, and when you stop and you think about this idea, this concept, that they can go to these vineyards and get, a better deal. They're going to buy, 300 cases. And everybody wants to get in on it because when that's the way that they're going to grow their sales. Naked Wine sends me a, Santa Barbara Syrah, man, I really like this, and we'll go out and buy it. And the producer of that Santa Barbara Syrah knows that. And this is where you have world-class, knowledgeable people negotiating a discount for a variety of wines that wouldn't ordinarily be accessible to you. And it's one of these really brilliant concepts that it can only lead to good things.
Yeah, and so stop shopping for wines like it's 2005. Folks, it's 2025, and it's time for a change. That's why this podcast is sponsored by Naked Wines. Naked Wines directly connects you to the world's finest independent winemakers, so you can get award-winning wine delivered straight to your door. Use our code WARROOM for the code and password at nakedwines.com and get their incredible deal of 6 bottles for just $39.99. I think I better repeat that. 6 bottles for $39.99. Good wine. James and I have always had problems going to the store and being paralyzed by the options and prices in the crowds. Now we get exactly what we want and have ditched most road trips to the store for good. Naked Wines helps you take any meal to the next level with the perfect bottle for any occasion. Thanks to Naked Wines, you can share an amazing steak dinner paired with a 2022 Scott Kelly Oregon Pinot Noir. It was one to remember, and the best part, every bottle is a passion project from an independent winemaker. So you are literally making an independent winemaker's dream come true. Now, how do they do it? It seems too good to be true, right? It is true. Naked Wines connects winemakers and wine drinkers directly, allowing for vineyards to your door delivery at up to 60% off what you would pay in store by cutting out the traditional retail middleman cost and markups. Winemakers can pass those savings on to you without skimping on quality. Now, they have no commitments or membership fees, so you can enjoy Naked Wines hassle-free. That means now is the time to join the Naked Wines community. Head to nakedwines.com/warroom. Click Enter Voucher and put in our code WARROOM for both the code and password for 6 bottles of wine for just $39.99 with shipping included. By my math, that's less than $7 a bottle. That's $100 off your first 6 bottles at nakedwines.com/warroom. And use the code and password WARROOM for 6 bottles for $39.99. That link is also in our show notes. Our guest is Geoff Cowan, an accomplished author, academic, activist, who once ran The Voice of America, which President Trump, by executive action, decided to disband this week. Geoff, first, thanks for being with us. Trump and Elon Musk have described The Voice of America as a left-wing, radical, anti-American outpost. It's been 25 years since you ran the VOA, but you know about it, you follow it. How does that square with your sense of what the VOA does?
Well, first of all, may I say to James and Al, congratulations to you guys on this podcast. And kind of amazing, it's a whole new form of information and news that's out there, and you're getting a large listenership. So anyway, congratulations to both of you. And I should also tell you, news and information is being distributed on new platforms all the time. And so in the early days, the Voice of America was on shortwave radio. Now it's on podcasts and on, social media and so forth. So it's reaching people in all kinds of ways. And when I was running it, it was when James and Bill Clinton were in the White House. It was that era, and we weren't doing all these new technologies, though we invented some new ones. As far as I can tell, the Voice of America, and and we're talking about just Voice of America Radio for Europe Radio, Liberty Radio, so all these different broadcasts in 60-some languages, reaching about 450 million people around the world, 425 to 450 million people around the world. As far as I can tell, it's both required by law and, in fact, a balanced, accurate, and important source of news and information. But it may be that in some languages about all those, there is some bias. I don't know. And the bias may be right-wing or left-wing. But as far as I know, the Voice of America is a balanced, accurate, and important source of news and information.
Well, most of us, I think, certainly were aware of the role that the Voice of America played right after it started in World War II and during the Cold War. Some supporters say, actually, it's as important as ever right now. Why is that?
Because I think news and information is so important around the world, and there are so many countries that don't allow it. I mean, I did a piece not long ago for Politico in which I looked into the importance of the Voice of America in Ukraine and Russia. What information is Russia getting in? If you want to reach inside of Russia with information in the Russian language or the other languages spoken in that country, how do you do it? Well, VOA does it, and so does Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. in their language services that reach in the languages of the people inside that country. How do you reach them in Russia or in Iran? If you don't want the only control inside of Iran to be the Iranian government, how do you reach the people in Iran? Well, the Farsi service of the Voice of America becomes the most important service of information. So you cut this stuff off. You cut off Voice of America. BBC does some of the same function, but you cut off the Voice of America and you're no longer getting that kind of free information, which is not controlled by those governments.
And how powerful or how much have the broadcast arms of China and Russia changed or grown in recent years, Jeff?
I believe they're growing. And one of the things that and I had a piece, in the LA Times this morning about this, but my understanding is that in the last couple of days, the Voice of America reaches people that I mentioned in many different ways.
Right.
One of the things is over local affiliates, sort of like a radio affiliate.
Right.
So you buy the time on the local affiliate to be broadcast. So now the Voice of America has gotten off of those affiliates. Well, the affiliates have to sell the time. It's my understanding that time periods that were controlled by America's actual accurate information in those languages of those countries has now been purchased by the Chinese and the Russians.
Wow.
So they're actually expanding their penetration into these countries.
Why do you think Trump did this?
Well, we keep wondering it. I don't believe, and I'd love to know what you guys think. You're much closer to it than I am. I don't think he's a Russian agent. I don't think he's pro-Russian. But I also don't think that his people really understand it, whether it's that he thinks it saves some money so that he can pass on tax breaks to people who are very rich, whether he thinks that America has functions that it shouldn't. I mean, why did he get rid of USAID? Although it's a different thing. But USAID, and I'm sure you guys are doing programming about this, but USAID has not only saving lives everywhere in the world, but it was also winning friends for America everywhere in the world. Well, USAID gets out of these countries, and who steps in? China with Belt and Road initiatives, other countries that want to win over those people. So people are dying at the same time that it's helping our political enemies. I just don't think that Trump or most of his people have an understanding of what these institutions have meant for America's freedom in the world. And one thing that's fascinating, I'm sure you guys as a podcaster are looking at this. It turns out if America is abandoning the field, and I think this is a good thing, there are other countries, it's not only the Russians and Chinese and Iranians that are stepping in, but the Europeans are seeing this as important. And so the same way in which I think it's unfortunate that they don't trust American nuclear protection, but they don't. So they're building their own nuclear cover. But they're also building a cover in some of these other areas. So Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, which I think you guys know the history of it, was actually funded originally by the CIA, but pretending to be locally run news operations for these countries in Eastern Europe. Now it's part of the umbrella organization that also runs the Voice of America. Part of the funding for RFERL, which has been abandoned by the United States, is being picked up by the Europeans.
Wow.
Because they know how important it is.
Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to James. I do think that Trump is very pro-Russian. I think he loves authoritarian government. I think he cares much more about Russia, say, than a place like Ukraine. And I'm turning it over to James, who may go even further. James,
what do you think?
I think, as I put it, the unified theory that explains everything is he's being blackmailed. It's the only thing that can explain all of his behavior. Now, do I know if it's a T-tape or if it's something else? I don't know, because it wouldn't be blackmail if I already knew about it. But I can't think of any other explanation for 10 different things that you see, and you see that Putin's humiliating him. But Jeff, this is what I'd say. Let's say I'm a guy in a focus group. But you hear this. Hell, they got all that goddamn foreign USAID, Voice of America. What is it good does that do? That was all set up for a world where you had communists and you had the Soviet Union. And it's just a bunch of Princeton people gallivanting around the world, spending money, talking about soft power and mumbling shit under their breath. And why am I spending my good money in Angola and not taking care, not doing things at home? We're letting the border come open and all these assholes, globalists are going around the country. And why do I give a shit about all of this? Okay.
Well, I think, first of all,
answer.
It may be that appeals to some people.
Right. It does.
But let me ask you this. Why does it appeal to Marco Rubio? When I became head of Voice of America, a big surprise to me was I was also the head of Radio and Television Marti. And you probably remember those days, both of you. And I came from a wing of the party where we were skeptical of Radio and Television Marti. Marco Rubio came from part of the, political sphere where they loved Radio and Television Marti. What I did when I became head of VOA and found myself in charge of these things, I looked into both of them. And I found, first of all, Television Marti was kind of a political boondoggle because it couldn't reach, you could jam the television effectively. So that was kind of a waste of money. So we tried to have it be doing better broadcasting for the rest of Central and South America in Spanish. But Radio Marti, we found, did a pretty good job. And my guess is, although I don't know, it still does. So if you're in Cuba, Radio Marti is an important source of information. And by the way, one of the things, you saw this in my op-ed page piece this morning, Arturo Sandoval, the great jazz trumpeter, was put in jail in Cuba for listening to Voice of America, listening to music, not for news. He loved it. That's where he learned about jazz. Well, where's Marco Rubio on all of this? He must understand this. Wow. And I don't think James, do you think he's being blackmailed?
No, I think he works for somebody. I don't think he knows if he doesn't do what he's told to do, he'll be fired. He gave up a United States Senate seat that he probably could have kept as long as he wanted it. And he went to work with the clear understanding that he is secondary to the boss. He's got a whole history of pontificating about freedom in Cuba. Got a history of being very distrustful of Putin. Of course, he's thrown it all over because this happens in life sometimes, Jeff. People give up all principle at the prospect of power. This is not the first. Marco Rubio is not the first person this happened to. And let's just assume that he thinks he made his bargain with the devil. He knew that bargain going in. And he said, I'm just going to humiliate myself and everything I believe in because I'll go down as the ex-Secretary of State in the United States. And and of course, we point out that, well, in another life, this person was actually a fiscal conservative, but this person believed this. And the acquiescence to his power is literally 100%. And they said, well, look, if I did what Liz Cheney did, I'd get 24% in a Republican primary. This is just a raw power play that people that become part of it agree to participate in. And I understand that, Rubio had some admirable qualities in him, but he don't give a shit anymore, and that's his choice. That's my view. And there's none left. There's no Brett Scowcroft is not walking back through the fucking door. It's over. Okay? It's all over. Hate to say it, but it's kind of where we are. And they're moving so fast, and as they say, they're breaking things so quickly, and they're overwhelming the system. And, we got to pick some turf to fight on here, but we got to be careful. And that's why we really wanted you on, to try to explain to people why this is a battle worth fighting, why it's in the interest of the United States to have these. What did it go? The Institute of Peace, which was a congressionally funded thing. They sent people in and ransacked the place. Whatever, yeah, Gestapo. I don't care what the O'Connor or anything you want to call it. Jeff said it. Why should a pipe fitter in Cedar Rapids give a shit about all of this? Isn't it just a bunch of people going to conferences and drinking espresso and drinking tea and having wine and on the taxpayer dime. And at the end of the day, what good does all this do?
Well, first of all, James, you're right. This is a long-time fight in America.
Right.
It's not a new thing. I mean, it goes back, I'm old enough to have been a kid, at least, when there was the fight inside the Republican Party between Robert Taft and Dwight Eisenhower, the isolationists versus the internationalists. So it's a big issue. If you think that the United States can be isolated in the world and do fine, just great. But if the pipe fitter you're talking about, there are many reasons they could care. For one thing, the pipe fitter you're talking about might have ancestors or have relatives in one of these countries, including Eastern European countries, which were oppressed, and they don't want to be back under Soviet domination.
Good point.
It used to be that these Eastern European descendants were conservatives. They were often Ronald Reagan conservatives. In your day, James, they were people who, you were trying to fight them over to become, Clinton supporters. But that was their origin, and they still have those relatives. Secondly, they don't really want to get diseases from around the world. And the diseases that they get, if we're not part of the World Health Organization, there's a better chance that they and their kids are going to get diseases. And that's part of what's happening with this administration. So if you're worried about health, that's a big deal. If you're worried about trade, you're a pipe fitter. But who's making your pipes? Right now, maybe there could be a time when the pipe stuff is all made in this country. But right now, the pipes either fit into something or they're made, some component to them in another country. If you're not part of an international order, which, you can argue about whether that order should have been constructed or not, but it's the order today, you're not going to have the things to put your pipe that it's going to fit into, or the components themselves, or the places to sell them. So all of these things are going to affect that pipe fitter. And then at the same time, this administration is cutting off. That pipe fitter has a mother on Social Security or father. They can't even go down to their Social Security offices these days because the Social Security offices have been closed. They can't call them on the phone because the phones no longer work in those Social Security offices. Not to mention the fact that Social Security's been cut. Does it matter? I think that pipe fitter has a reason to be concerned.
So before I let you go, Jeff, this is a talk point. I know you're out there and people will pay attention to you. And my favorite example is people talk about, NATO. We contribute more to NATO than other countries do. That's true. Okay, that's true. Well, the EU, it's kind of screwed up. They got all these regulations and they tried all that. And that's kind of true. And this has cost us, having troops in Europe has cost us money. You know what cost us more money than anything? European nationalism in the first half of the 20th century. And it's a pretty good, what cost us a lot of money? World War I. World War II. You want to talk about money? Let's talk about money front and center. And
a lot of lives, by the way. That pipe fitter's grandfather, if that pipe fitter's grandfather was living here, was probably killed in World War I.
And what all of these, however cumbersome NATO is, however cumbersome the EU is, however cumbersome, in some expense, if you think that's expensive, try world wars. Try being in a trench. All right, try going up a cliff in Normandy, and you'll find out what expense is. Try to pay off veterans' benefits for 50 years, 60 years after the war. So, sometimes this is my view, and I know the whole idea of an internationalist foreign policy is not at risk. It's at ultimate danger. Sometimes you got to concede that everything they say is true. Okay, we do pay a lot for it. That's right. We do have troops over there. You want to pay your fair share of World War I? You want to pay your fair share of World War II? You know what Lend-Lease cost us? So I'm urging they will focus on, USAID is 1.04% of the entire federal budget. I did the math on my cell phone. Okay, I just said 6.7 trillion, 41 billion. I think it's even less than that. Okay, but just do it. You can do it on a cell phone. What percent of 6.75 trillion is 41 billion? And Siri will tell you. And okay, that's what we're doing. But you know what we've had? We've not had a world war, which there's some value in that. Some value.
And you know, James, to take your hypothesis and just carry it forward, we won't know for a few years what happens.
Yeah.
But meantime, Europe is not going to give up on protecting itself. So you'll have nuclear arsenals elsewhere. I don't like nuclear bombs, but France will build more. South Korea will decide we can no longer trust the United States as an umbrella. So South Korea will build a nuclear arsenal. So there will be nuclear proliferation everywhere. Is America safer in that world? China, you know, we will no longer be the protector. Meantime, you know, when we were kids, I mentioned before, pound sterling was the or when I was a kid anyway, the currency in the world was the British pound. It's now the dollar. We take that for granted. Won't be. So all of a sudden, America's withdrawn from the world. It isn't any longer. And we don't sell our jets. That pipe fitter you're talking about is maybe making component parts that go into fighter jets that are sold around the world. But people no longer trust us with the fighter jets. So they build the fighter jets in England now. And we're no longer building those fighter jets. And it's not like the rest of the world has given up on its own power. So I think we may not know it for several years, but my belief is that we will live in a more dangerous world in which America will be in more danger, as you're saying, maybe from another world war, maybe from economic catastrophe, but we won't be the world leader that we were today. And that's going to be bad for I think, for that pipe fitter.
So, Jeff, I'm really thank you. You were a terrific guest. I think these kinds of discussions are necessary, because we don't have a lot of time. We have to bring the importance of these kind of things home to people in language that they can understand. And, you know, if you go back in history, maybe the first flirtation we had with this was something appropriately called the know-nothings. Can I tell you something? We're seeing a resurgence in the know-nothings.
They make the know-nothings look good.
Well, people will know something. Listen to your podcast, people will know something. So,
Jeff, before we go, one question. I hope I'm wrong. I hope court challenges may be possible. I fear it's going to be very hard to ever put the VOA back together again, at least the way it was. And I just hope that's wrong. But what is the legacy? I mean, it was some of the great journalists. Your father was a VOA head. You were a VOA head. John Chancellor, Amanda Bennett. It was directed by Edward R. Murrow. The legacy is pretty profound, despite what's happening to it right now.
Well, and the current and former VOA heads, you know a lot of them, Al. I mean, current head, I think Mike Abramowitz is a good guy.
He's a terrific guy.
Washington Post reporter. His father was a famous diplomat. I think, you know, people have been really good. You know a lot of them. And it's interesting, they have picked as head of VOA for over the years some really talented people. I believe the people in the trenches are really good. And I think they're some of the best reporters in the world, as I said, broadcasting in languages that most people in America, well, they come from one of those traditions. But most don't know the names of even the languages of the other traditions that people speak. I have students in my class at USC who come from Cambodia. And I say to those kids, what language do your family speak? Well, their main language is Khmer. I say, where do you get news in Khmer? You can now get it, thanks to the internet, on the Voice of America. There's no American broadcaster or American news operation where they can really get world news. They get it from the Voice of America. They will no longer be getting that news. I worry, how do you reconstruct that? As you say, it's going to be very hard to put it together. And we will lose that in the world, and other countries will gain. They'll take over our slots. They'll build this time. You can't reconstruct a great news organization.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right.
All right, Jeff, I got to go. But one more thing. How many retirement parties I have to go through with Bob Trump? Every time I'm turning around, I got to go to Southern California.
They are. I want to make this point. They are at the second best Annenberg School of Communications in America right now.
start spring planting season right with fast-growing trees. You know, you got to look into this, because if you have rural land in Virginia, the Commonwealth actually kind of pays you something to plant trees. So I have my boy out there. Look, maybe I can even this. But, you know, this sounds so trite, but I think I shall never see something as lovely as a tree. We know that we talk about climate and everything else. Well, trees play an essential thing, and they're great to look at. This is a great product. I wish everybody would go out and get this and plant trees left and right. You know, trees are damn good things.
Yeah, well, you know, as you know, we have a place down the Chesapeake, and I want to do the same thing, because fast-growing trees make it easy to get your dream yard order online and get your plants delivered directly to your door in just a few days without ever leaving home. Not only does their Alive and Thrive guarantee ensure your plants arrive happy and healthy, nothing better than a happy plant, fast-growing trees even gives you support from their trained plant experts once they arrive to make sure everything grows great. No matter what your space looks like, fast-growing trees offer 6,000 plants to provide the perfect choice for you. They have everything from indoor plants to fruit trees, full-size privacy trees, and more. Just follow their 14-point quality checklist, and fast-growing trees will help you care for each plant individually based on their needs. Now, when you have help from the pros, everything from watering routines to maintaining the correct sunlight exposure becomes easy. That means you'll be giving your plants the care they deserve the moment they ship to your home. Unlike James, I've been a creature of the city, although we do have a place in the country. But with fast-growing trees, you know, we know that we have exciting options for that place. Because of them, we learn you can grow a vanilla bean plant indoors. I haven't done that yet, but we're going to do it. But with so many different plants to grow, the choice is yours. At Fast Growing Trees, you can talk to a plant expert about your soil type, landscape design, how to take care of your plants, and everything else you need. No green thumb required, thank goodness. So don't wait. This spring, they have the best deals for your yard with up to half off on select plants and other deals. Listeners to our show get 15% off their first purchase when using the code WARROOM at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code WARROOM at checkout. Again, fastgrowingtrees.com, code WARROOM. Now's the perfect time to plant. Use War Room to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. You also can find the link in our show notes. You know, James, as basketball's March Madness kicks off, our guest on this show would be, as he has been in previous years, the great John Feinstein, America's preeminent sports journalist, author of more than 40 books on a range of sports, but his true love really was basketball. Sadly, we lost John this month, passing away at only 69. He was one of our very favorite guests, a regular, and our little tribute is going back almost a year to the day when he was on Politics War Room. James, let's listen to John then.
All right, I'm not going to get you to bet, John Feinstein, but I am going to
want me to predict the Final Four.
11:44, April 8th, 11:44 p.m. So James and I are going to be asleep probably, but who's going to be cutting down the nets? You're right.
Well, if you make me pick someone, and I don't know why I let you, but I still pick Connecticut. I think I think they've been the best team all year. I don't understand why the so-called prognosticators or whatever they call themselves, bracketologists, kept saying before the last weekend that Purdue would be the number one seed in the whole tournament. I mean, to me, maybe I'll be proven wrong. I'm proven wrong all the time. I just think Connecticut's the best team. And Danny Hurley's done an amazing job coaching a team that lost 5 of its top 8 scorers off of last year's championship team. And they may be better this year than they were last year.
John, as he did so often, nailed it last year when he predicted the Yukon Huskies would win the NCAA tournament. I will forever wonder if, despite his reservations about freshman-laden teams, he would have gone this year with his alma mater, Duke, which is a special team. John's most famous book was chronicling Indiana's mercurial Bobby Knight, A Season on the Brink. Readers loved it, a bestseller. Knight hated it. But the book he was proudest of was on race and the NFL. On politics, he was a very compassionate liberal. He died much too early, but he surely left a mark. Boy, do I miss him.
Yeah, I had my nephew Mary's sister's son, wanted for John Feinstein book for Christmas, and of course it was December 24th. And the guy delivered the book to me, all signed and everything. I mean, he was one of the great, most prolific and most talented sports writers ever. I mean, man with, legendary reputation. But he was every bit as good a human being as he was a sports writer. When I saw that, it just blew a hole in my heart. I mean, we've lost a giant and a good friend.
Yeah. No, me too. He could be very opinionated. He could sometimes a stranger to self-doubt. But it's amazing the number of athletes, coaches, and others that wanted to talk to John Feinstein because they knew he was the best. Tom Izzo, the great Michigan State coach, said he was just someone that you wanted to talk to. And, we're going to, as I said, we're going to miss him a lot.
Yep, we are.
Okay. R.I.P. John Feinstein. James, if you're trying to set a tone for 2025, you want to just actually even elevate your sartorial splendor, how perfect is refreshing your wardrobe with stylish, high quality, and affordable clothing from Quince?
It's all of those things, and it's really affordable. I mean, it just is. I mean, and the stuff that they do, I literally match quality against anything. I mean, I'm on my way to London. I bet you it's the same quality as Savile Row almost. It's that good.
Yeah. Elevating our style, it used to mean breaking the bank. But with Quince, you can get high-end, versatile pieces at prices you can actually afford. Now we can upgrade our style by snagging killer luxury essentials that sync with our vibes and wallets. Quince has all the must-haves, like Mongolian cashmere crewneck sweaters from $50. Cashmere sweaters from $50. Iconic 100% leather jackets, versatile flow knit activewear, and more by partnering directly with top factories. Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. The best part is that all the Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. Now, we love how Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices, along with premium fabrics and finishes. So after checking them out, we think everyone needs Quince's Mongolian cashmere sweaters. There's nothing better for looking your best, even when the weather is cold. And if you're prioritizing fitness this year, there's no better workout motivation than some new activewear. Our Quince favorites are the luxurious Mongolian cashmere cardigan sweater and the stretch wool dress pant. The material feels amazing, and they're the perfect combo for looking good and keeping warm. Their style is perfect for getting things done on the hill, reading in a recliner, or making an impression at a dinner party. So find your fit and indulge in affordable luxury. Go to quince.com/warroom for free shipping on your order and a 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/warroom to get free shipping and a 365-day guaranteed return. Again, quince.com/warroom. The link is in our show notes.
Fine style for any season with Quince.
Hey, James, our listener questions, boy, they're flooding us, and they're such good questions. Stephanie in Petaluma, California, says regular folks need an easy way to show resistance. What are your ideas?
That is the question. I think people are ultimately very, I don't call them angry. They're afraid. They're concerned. They're getting angry at something is that you think it's bad policy. All right. This is a really, really grave situation. And I think that the people on this that do this show share this view. I think this friend from California shares this view. We're at a moment where we might not make it. And so, you're called on to, maybe research races, maybe some donation here, there, where you can. What I would do is that when you see people doing a good thing or standing up for something good, be twice as willing to praise good things as you are to condemn bad things, because people are going to need the courage coming up to stand up to this. And we don't have a whole lot of power. The consequences of defeat are not just draconian for us as individuals, but for the entire United States. So I understand citizen power is limited. Hell, the power of being a United States senator is limited. We're in a minority. And whatever you do, take from this the lesson that winning elections is everything.
Absolutely.
There's nothing remotely close. And if we do make it through this, which is not a given, let's collectively pledge that we're not going to have a stupid cycle like we did in 2024.
And Stephanie, James earlier mentioned the importance of that April 1 Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. That's 2,000 miles away from Petaluma. But if you have any Badger State friends, tell them that race that Elon Musk is going to throw, I don't know, he's thrown in $10 million already, probably throwing $20 million. Elon Musk is trying to dictate a Wisconsin State Supreme Court race.
Tens of millions of dollars.
Other candidate out there, your candidate, Stephanie, would be Susan Crawford. Tell your friends. Brian in Nassau County, New York, says, how is it that Tommy Tuberville, not the savviest of senators, boy, that puts it mildly, Brian, figured out how to gum up the Democrats' Senate agenda during the Biden administration, but Senator Schumer and others can't figure out any similar tactics to gum up the Senate Republicans? Well, first of all, it takes time. What Tuberville did was outrageous. He held up military promotions. There will be opportunities for Democrats to do that kind of stuff, hold up nominations, put holds on things, and they have to exercise it. It's really not a very good procedure. I think the holds, by and large, are a bad part of Senate rules. But damn it, you are not going to unilaterally disarm. And I think those opportunities, Brian, will arise.
Yeah, he did that toward the end. I mean, could you do something like that? But you'd have to be as stupid as Tommy Tuberville to do something like that. Unfortunately, I don't know of any Democratic senator that is anywhere near that stupid.
Oh, yeah.
You could take the stupidest Democrat. So, and it was a stupid thing. It compromised national security. It irritated to no end. It held up people's lives. And there was never going to be any avail to it. And I'm saying we're going to have to do a lot of things that are going to be difficult, but we need to do difficult, necessary things, not stupid, unnecessary things. But you have to be as stupid as Tommy Tuberville to think of something that's stupid.
I think the only real blemish on Nick Saban's record was losing any football game to Tommy Tuberville. But moving on, John in Gurnee, Illinois. John's a frequent questioner, and they're always good. Asked, Trump tariffs and DOGE cuts will hurt people in rural areas. These voters are overwhelmingly Republicans. Is now the time for Democrats to campaign hard in rural areas?
Well, I think it was always the time for Democrats to campaign hard in rural areas. I don't know how the party ever got away from that. Some of its more urbanist members and commentators lived in a folly of a world that we could exists in elections by just concentrating on large urban areas that are not even that strategically located. I would recommend a piece by Michelle Cottle in the New York Times today on Jason Crow, because I think Jason Crow is the kind of prototype of what the modern Democratic Party should embrace. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. And, it's now, this should give us, if we play this very smartly, it should give us an opportunity to literally reintroduce ourselves to rural America. Because for large swaths of rural America, they feel like the Democratic Party doesn't see them, doesn't talk to them, or does not prioritize them. And, this gives us a chance for them to take another look at the Democratic Party.
Right.
And I hope that we don't, in the stupidity of, we got to be the most progressive, self-righteous, moralistic people in the world. And, people that live in rural America just, fat, lazy, and stupid, which is decidedly not true. But that's the way that some of the urbanist elements of our party have tried to come across. Yeah. And it's stupid, and they ought to apologize to the world for being so goddamn stupid.
James, Tatum in North Carolina. Tatum, next time tell us where. It's a great state. It's a big state. Lots of interesting places.
Yeah, it really is. And there's a lot of difference between Western Carolina and Eastern Carolina and Piedmont Carolina.
Great places in every one of them. So tell us where you're from. Tatum, he asked, is the Trump tax increases the largest tax increase on the middle class in modern times? Tatum is talking, I'm sure, about the tariffs. If he keeps enacting them, and if they stay, understand a tariff is a tax increase on you, Tatum. It's not a tax increase on the Chinese or the Europeans or the Canadians. And if he keeps with his tariffs, now, he's going to use them as a bargaining chip, a leverage to make money off them. If he does, I would guess it would be the largest effective tax increase in the middle class in non-wartime. I haven't looked that up, but I think that's a pretty safe assumption.
Well, okay, you have that, which is literally a direct tax on consumers. But then, wait a minute, we're talking about cutting Social Security, where you say, well, that's not a tax increase as such. It is an expected and paid for source of revenue that you're entitled to. They're going to cut it. I don't know if that's any more harmful than raising taxes, but it has the same effect. You thought you were going to pay something, now you're not going to pay as much, or you're not going to get as much. The same thing with the tariffs. And the thing to always remember, that when they're coming after all of these benefits, they're coming after because they want your money so they can, so the billionaires can have it at every time. And it can come through tax cuts. It can come through spending cuts. It can come through any number of ways. It can through the regulatory cuts. It can come through airline safety cuts, food safety cuts, drug safety cuts, you name it. They're all coming after you, my dear friend, and that's you, and listen up, that's particularly applicable to you in rural America. They don't care about you. Whatever money you got left, they want it for themselves.
James Bowe in Evanston, Illinois, the home of the Northwestern Wildcats, says Dems should concentrate on Trump, not Musk. Examples of the bad consequences blamed on Trump, not Musk, will be more effective for Democrats. Do you agree?
Kind of no.
Yeah.
Okay, because Musk tells, I think, a really good story. Trump can't run again because I detest him. I can't stand him. But Musk is less popular than Trump. They haven't, we got to help people figure out that they're coming after your money. And Trump doesn't care. Of course, he'll give it all to Musk. But I think Musk is a very lucrative target here. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. And Musk is different. It's not like blaming it on Leon Panetta or Karl Rove or Jim Baker. I mean, Musk has been given this incredible power, and he's doing incredible things. And I mean, my favorite Musk acolyte is the 19-year-old kid he has over who is rummaging through everything at the State Department and the Homeland Security. Who is that kid? Well, they call him Big Balls. So I honestly don't think that even Karl Rove or Leon Panetta ever had a Big Balls running around.
No, good. Yeah, good. Let's go after Andy Card and Mac McFarlane. Yeah. Come on.
Hey, James, let's go international. Angie in Glasgow, Scotland, says, do you think no matter how bad the USA will get internally and regarding foreign policy, Trump will just say how perfect everything is? Worse, the majority of the USA electorate will believe him. On number one, there's no doubt. Trump learned from Roy Cohn, who basically said attack, never explain, and always claim victory. That's what he'll do no matter what, always has. Said he did with his behavior during COVID was perfect. It wasn't. It cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Will the majority of the USA electorate believe him? He doesn't have it right now. Right now, 53% basically think he's doing a bad job. And as the evidence rolls in, if the economy goes south, if he tries to cut Medicaid, if he gets in all kinds of problems internationally, I think that number is going to grow up. Trump did not get a big mandate. Let's not forget that. He won by 1.3 points or something. And I think the greatest asset he had was probably Joe Biden. So,
first of all, astute observation from a friend over in Scotland. I think it was in Edinburgh. It was Edinburgh, would say that. It was a pretty remarkable place, and it's a good reason that a lot of people go there. We have something coming. So Kevin Hassard, who is the head of the Council of Economic Advisors, in other words, he's the chief economic architect of the Trump administration, said that he expected first quarter growth could be as high as 2.5%. My guess is it's going to be no such thing. And you just catalog that away is evidence that they're clueless. Kellyanne Conway actually said a few days ago that the stock market is on a tear. It's on a tear, all right, but ain't the tear that you're looking at.
Tearing up my IRA.
Yeah, somebody said the two pronouns of my portfolio was and were. But the point is, when we're ready for this engagement, and this engagement is coming sooner than you think, all right? It's coming sooner than you think. Start getting these arrows, put them in your quiver, because we're going to need them to show how clueless they are. And again, the 2.5% GDP prediction, I don't think anybody thinks that's going to come to fruition. For certain, as of now, the stock market is on a tear. It's on a tear the wrong way. But keep accumulating evidence of their economic cluelessness, because it's all about them getting all the money. It's all it's about. It's the money, stupid.
Yeah, it sure is. James, our final question from Andy in Canberra, Australia.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful place down under. Who says you really need a word for what Trump is doing. I reckon a play on words using woke could do the job. Troke, choke, rather woke than broke. Any suggestions? Remember, it's a family audience.
Yeah, the Aussies, we had a bill a long time ago. There was a basketball player. Eddie Palyabinkers. He was from Canberra, Australia. Yeah. And he probably did more to increase Louisiana's knowledge of Australian geography than anybody else. What the hell's Canberra, Australia? It's actually the capital. What? You mean Sydney's not the capital? It's not Melbourne? Yeah, it's actually, it is one of those places, another one that comes to mind is Brasilia, where they just built a city to be the capital. But most places, it's Paris or London. We did the same thing with Washington, but it's just been around for a long time. God.
Yeah.
But Australians, I'm so glad that they're our allies because they've got such a wonderful sense of humor. And maybe, I hope our Australian friends keep writing in because they always bring something more to the conversation.
Hey, we love those questions. There's some we couldn't get to. I apologize. There were just too many really, really great ones. So send them in again, and we'll try to get to them next week. And thank you so much. Hey, thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. As always, send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. Following this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you check out the links to our sponsors, Naked Wines, Fast Growing Trees, and Quince in our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting them. When you do, you help make this podcast happen. Now, to keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And check out our Substack at politicswarroom.com. James and I are constantly adding new content, so go take a look. You can also find other shows you might enjoy on the Politicon YouTube channel or when you search Politicon on your favorite podcast sites. Remember, please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room planning.